eye on it, try to get it going, but let's go ahead.
Okay, sure. Okay, well, welcome everybody. And I do mean every kind of body. Everybody's welcome here. I'm really loving that everyone is coming from all around the world. I'm so excited about the incredible minds we've got here offering so much knowledge. I'm really, really grateful to be part of this. This is amazing. And I want to acknowledge Global Woman in helping me organise this, because this is the very first Zoom webinar I've ever tried to run. So Global Woman, Yumini from Global Woman was absolute superstar. I would love to for you to put in the chat box what you're most interested in finding out about, hearing about from our panelists, what has got you interested, what you'd like to know. So any of those questions, please pop them in. We'd love to hear them. You might get yours answered, you never know. First of all, I'd like to also just acknowledge that we're all in different places right now, that this is quite an intense time. I was in a webinar and thought leader Peter Cook pointed out that people are in all sorts of different states right now. Some people are actually thriving right now. Some people are doing okay. Others are struggling, and some are fully drowning. So there's all sorts of different places that we can explore. How does the erotic, how can we relate to the erotic from these different places? And each of us panelists will explore our perspective on that and offer insights and something that hopefully is going to be valuable for you to take away. So I can't imagine it wouldn't be. Look at these brilliant people here. Honestly. They're so good. I wanted to introduce myself first. I am Artemisia Devine. I have been studying sex, exploring sex, investigating sex for 25 years now. It's kind of, my friends used to say, can you talk about anything other than sex? I'm like, what is there other than sex? So I've been fascinated by it on all its angles for a very long time. 10 of those years was as a full-time sex worker. So being on the front lines, exploring through being embodied in the moment with an awful lot of different erotic psyches. That kind of gives you a perspective. That's something worth sharing, I think. But one of the things that I really want to explore today is the fact that even though we're all coming from different places, thriving and doing okay and struggling and drowning, one thing that's the same for all of us is that there's a new normal. The old normal has gone, and we can create a new normal. And we can passively go into that, or we can intentionally go into that. And if we decide that we're going to create an intentional relationship with the erotic as part of the new normal, what would that look like? Where can we go from there? I guess my expertise, my area of interest is, I'm very strongly influenced by Jack Moran. A lot of you will know Jack Moran. How do you pronounce it? Moran? I've only ever seen it written. But I'm very strongly influenced by Jack's work because it goes into the erotic motivations. It's really brave. It goes into the why we're turned on. And that includes the taboo turn-ons, our emotions that turn us on, all the different levels of a psyche that gets involved with being turned on and aroused. And I loved it. I just totally absorbed that book, just soaked it in. And I could recognize all the way through, oh, yes, that's what's happening with my clients. Oh, that's the thing. He's right, that thing. But it wasn't easy to work out how to apply that theory into the actual sex work, into the actual creating of an experience for somebody based on their particular unique erotic wiring. So I developed that over a few years. I've been working on that and working on it and honing it. And on the ground, doing the work, meeting the different people, encountering them through play, I explored and developed his theories in different ways, found things that didn't work, went off in my own directions and discovered some new ones. But probably one of the most important things to notice is that play is how we discover ourselves. It's probably play. What do you put in the text box? What do you think the purpose of play is? What do you think the benefit of play is? I can't see any questions. Where are they gone? Oh, because I'm not in the chat. I can only see the Q&A.
I'm seeing experience without goals, exploration. Absolutely, play loosens the conditioning. Curiosity, wonder, joy. Unleash different sides of us, experiment, laugh, cry, feel free. Fun, vitality. Someone asked, what was Jack Moran's book called? That was called The Erotic Mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, there is an option at the bottom. If you have a question, you can put it in the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen so we don't lose it, because sometimes the chat goes by really fast.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see. Break into a new pattern, connection with ourselves and others, exploring in presence and imagination. I like that. I like that one. Pleasure, inviting others to create something together.
That's right. And also processing our relationship to our emotions, to ourselves, processing our relationship to other people, including our relationship to power and hierarchy. Have you watched puppies play? Running around madly, loving each other, being part of the tribe, but they're still going to play fight. They're going to wrestle. They're going to work out how they're going to relate to each other, what their relationship is to each other, what their relationship is with themselves through their play. They're going to learn skills for life. When you watch children play, you watch them dress up, take on different characters, explore different aspects of themselves. I think adult play is really important too. Adult play is a way that we can explore our own psyche through our bodies. And what happens if we intentionally create play scenes around our own unique erotic psyches? What if we start becoming more intentional about it? What would happen then? This is the thing that I really like to explore. Tell me what happens. How do you like it when somebody puts their full attention and focus on you? And they're curious about you. They want to know who you are and how you work. They want to know what makes you happy, what makes you tick. They put their full attention on you. How do you feel? I wish I could see the chat box.
I love having my lover's full attention. I feel appreciated. Someone says that makes me feel generally uncomfortable, which is a common experience for sure. Yummy. I feel honored and revered, seen and valued.
I know. I personally, I crave it. Yamini.
Yamini's here.
What do you think?
I feel like a goddess. As long as I'm not feeling too self-conscious, it feels awesome, like I'm being utterly indulged. I feel like a goddess, giddy sometimes. It makes me feel alive and real. Staying totally in the moment makes me feel safe to try things I wouldn't usually. It's wonderful and also can be quite unnerving if out of practice, but I love tension, I love newness, and it can also mean rediscovering past familiarity that's gone a bit faded.
Mm-hmm. All great things.
I get a chance to learn more about myself.
Yeah, you do get a chance to, when you communicate yourself to somebody else, you certainly get a chance to learn more about yourself. For sure, absolutely. So what if we then decided that our turn-ons or our desires were actually a wise force inside of us that had something to offer us? And we put our attention and focus on our turn-ons and our desires. What do you think that part of us, how do you think that part of us will respond? I think it tends to respond with blossoming and noticing and communicating back. And what do you think? What happens when you put your attention on that? What would happen if you decided to make the active decision to respect your turn-ons, even the ones that you're a bit conflicted about and you don't understand yet? Could that create a two-way conversation between you and your desires? What kind of wisdom could you tap into from there? And then what if you actually learn how to intentionally engage the wisdom that you got from that in a play scene, purposely engaging it in ways that become aware of and use on purpose your relationship to power, your emotional aphrodisiacs, your particular life challenges that you've eroticized. The erotic, one thing I've really learned about the erotic is that it's it's kind of like when I'm creating a play scene, there is a little bit of narrative theory going on. It's not a role play necessarily, but it's creating an awareness that just like when you're watching a movie, there needs to be some sort of tension that needs to be resolved in order to get your hottest turn-ons, right? So there is this some sort of, imagine watching a movie where everything was nice, and you hit the peak and there was no challenges in between. There was nothing to process. There was no tension to resolve. So one of the things that I began noticing when I was designing play sessions intentionally with my clients was if I sat them down on my lovely velvet couch and had a good chat with them before we played, and I noticed these different elements within them as they talked about their desires, often things that they've never told anyone before, ever, even though they've never felt game to. But then I would listen to, that person needs to have a relationship with shame, but they need to do it with someone with an attitude who initially is disgusted, but then demonstrates their approval through being aroused themselves. Okay. So we need to have this tension that resolved. How can I create a play scene with that in mind without them even being aware that I've noticed these things? And then I would do that and they'd be like, wow, I don't know why I feel so good. Yes, it was amazingly hot, but I also feel really, I don't know, I can't say. I've got a peace, I've got a, and they often really struggle to find words because it's that wordless part of themselves that they've entered into, which is pretty amazing. But I think it comes back to feeling alignment. When you create a relationship with those parts of yourself through embodying them and playing, you become in alignment with yourself. You're creating a relationship with all levels of yourself.
Artemisia, we have a question come in that says, how did you learn to notice that?
Practice. That's one of the things about being a sex worker is you get the chance to practice a lot. There's a lot of different people you meet and everybody's different. Every single person is different. So I have to notice each person. And it is actually an art form to learn how to do that. But it is a learnable art form. It is something that can be accessed. And that is what I specialize in nowadays. That's what I do. I help people to recognize each person's unique imprint and then how to create tailored play dates on it so that you can create an embodied intentional two-way relationship with your own desire, then with somebody else's desire, and share it. That's pretty powerful practice. But the most important thing that comes out of it is it actually opens up levels of yourself. It's kind of like that integrated place when you're really in relationship with those different levels of yourself, the parts of yourself that speak in symbols, like the part that inspires art and creativity, that speaks in symbols. It doesn't speak in linear logic. When you're having a two-way conversation with that part of yourself, you're integrated. What kind of world do you create? What kind of relationships do you foster? What becomes important to you? What kind of world, what kind of new normal can you create from that place?
So we have some questions from the audience. One question is, well, we are having some, so just to clarify for everybody, we will all be getting a chance to talk. Artemisia was just launching into her segment. And then we had a question for you, Artemisia, about what is creating a placing? Can you clarify what that means?
A play scene, creating a play scene. Okay, so that's intentionally choreographing an experience for somebody, an erotic experience. Okay, so instead of just going for thrusting things in holes, it's about creating tension, creating emotional interaction, finding symbolic ways of representing that with different activities. I'd love to go into that a lot more. But I won't want to take up other people's space and talk. It's time for me to pass over things at the moment. But I do want to acknowledge that this is something that you can learn to do solo or partnered. And there's lots of questions who came in before the webinar began, talking about how can I explore the erotic if I'm alone. I'm in lockdown by myself. I don't have access to a lover. I'm alone. What am I going to do here? And I think actually somebody who's really great to speak about is Rasha.
All right, I'll step in now. And there are some questions I see in the Q&A and in the chat about this as well. I know this is a question a lot of folks are dealing with. So really quickly, my name is Marcia Baczynski. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based in the Bay Area, California. And I'm the co-founder of Cuddle Party, and I do a lot of relationship and communication coaching. And a lot of the work I do is around helping people to figure out what it is they want and how to talk about it. And that is very relevant when we are suddenly in a situation where maybe our needs for touch, for connection, for play, for sex, for just having a person across the dinner table from us have gone from being met without a lot of effort, or maybe with some effort, but access, to not having access. And so I've been teaching a couple of online workshops recently about this, and I'm going to be teaching one on Saturday about how to get your touch needs met in the time of social distancing. And here's the truth. Nothing is a replacement for another person. Like, that's just, like, we need each other to co-regulate. We need each other to have that sensation of weight on our bodies, to to look someone in the eye, and to just like be humans with other humans. I mean, we are primates. We need to be monkeys with each other. We need to be apes with one another. And that's not available to a lot of us right now. That doesn't mean it's an all or nothing situation, and it doesn't mean all is lost. So one of the things we've been exploring in the workshops I've been doing is exploring, we've been taking apart touch from the perspective of touching and being touched. And it turns out with touching, there's a lot that we can do to have that experience, that sort of, your nervous system calms down, and you kind of get a little spacey, and you're not thinking about your to-do list, and that thing that happens when you cuddle. And I've cuddled thousands of people with Cuddle Party. I've worked with thousands of people around this kind of stuff. And I know that moment where happens. And I didn't know if we could make it work online, and we started exploring it. And so one thing that Robin is also very familiar with this exercise, because it's an exercise that our colleague Betty Martin teaches, called Waking Up the Hands. And if you do a search for that on Betty Martin's website, you'll probably find a video about it, but we can put links in the follow-up for this. But you just take an object, any object. I've got nail clippers, I've got a jar of slime, I've got, you know, a tape measure, like whatever's lying around on your desk. It literally doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a sexy object. And you lay back and you slow the hell down. And you let your hands explore the object, not from a function kind of thing, but just like, how does this feel? What does it feel like? What does it feel like if I just lean back and close my eyes and let my fingertips really explore this object? And it takes about 5 to 10 minutes. I'm not going to walk us through it because we don't have the time here. I want to make sure the other panelists get a chance to talk, but that exercise alone is fantastic for lowering your blood pressure, not thinking about stress, and that exploration of touch you don't need another person for. Like, many of us have had it, like stroking a blanket or playing with our dog, like petting our dogs. Like, this happens when we pet our cats, our dogs, our ferrets, I don't know, whatever animals you might have around. And it's that feeling of like, we play with our kids' hair, or our partner or lover, maybe your parent, whoever, like, you have someone there. Maybe it's a lover, but it doesn't have to be. So that's one thing we've been exploring in the workshops that I would love for y'all to try, and let me know how it goes. And then the other thing is, I have someone, but we're not together. And people are really asking a lot about that. And we've been doing some explorations in the workshops around playing with instructing one another how to touch over the screen. So if, you know, Barbara, I would just say, will you take your fingertips and just stroke them down your cheeks?
Sure, Marcia.
Just really, even slower,
Okay.
And close your eyes, pretend like it's me. And you can use sexy voices too.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you.
So that's something you can play with at a distance with a lover. And it doesn't even have to just be hands. You can play with objects. Sometimes it's really fun to have a bunch of objects. And again, it doesn't have to be super performative or super sexy if that's not your thing. But if it is your thing, like, go for it, right? If the like lace and the feather duster is your thing, like, by all means. I'm more of a like, what's nearby? I can use this. I can use anything. I'm also pretty trained in this, so I can make all kinds of things feel good. So I've been having a lot of fun with this, and what I've been finding is it really is, it's not the same as a person, but man, does it take the edge off. It really, just that slowing down and that feeling the sensations, and making a point to play with the sensual, the skin, the touch, the erotic. And you can incorporate other elements like sound, voice, instructions, commands, if you're into that kind of power exchange, but also it can just be really sweet. So there's a lot of different vibes and flavors you can attach to that. And if y'all have questions about that, I mean, I could say I can fill 2 hours with this, and I will be on Saturday, but if you have questions on that, you can drop them in the Q&A box. I'll be happy to answer them at the end. So I'll stop there for now.
Thank you, Marsha. That was really, really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I actually did do Marsha's workshop, and it was actually really, you get more out of it than you think. It's pretty good. Barbara is going to speak next, and Barbara is the founder of the Urban Tantra program, which is a hot and healing approach to sexuality that adapts and blends to a wide variety of sacred sexuality practices, from Tantra to BDSM. She's the author of Urban Tantra, sacred sex for the 21st century, and ecstasy is necessary, a practical guide to relationships, and so much more, and some more things as well. She's actually amazing. She's been named the best tantric sex seminar leader in New York City by Time Out New York magazine. She runs some amazing workshops too. I've also attended her workshops. Do it, it's good. What would you like to say, Barbara?
Thank you, Asia. I'd like to do a little offering around the erotic as a resource for emotional regulation, spiritual guidance, and everyday magic, by which I mean embodiment. We are connecting primarily by screens right now or phone, and it's very easy to get out of body. And so here's some offerings around that. I know a lot of you are alone now, and you're wondering what you can do on your own. And Marcia, I think you spoke brilliantly to that, and I can't wait to do your workshop. I began my exploration of conscious sexuality during the AIDS pandemic in the 1980s. So basically everything I first learned and practiced for many years was solo, with rare exception. So this is all feeling very familiar to me. So here are some tips that come out of that. First of all, quickly, if you're partnered or living with others, you have got to negotiate alone time. By which I mean just real, hi, I need 30 minutes on my own. I need 60 minutes on my own. I'm going to go to this part of the house or the apartment, and I will be back at the end of that time. And they know that they're not supposed to bother you in any way, shape, or form unless the house is on fire. And you grant them that same privilege. You can do anything you want with that time. You can meditate, you can read a book, you can pet the dog, or you can jerk off. All is good, but it's your time. And when it's their time, it's their time. If you're alone, this is even more important. And it's like, what do you mean? I'm alone. Why do I need alone time? Because if we're alone, so much of our time is taken up with maybe we're working, maybe we're watching Netflix, maybe we're just worrying and freaking out. You need time away from that. So you actually have to be a little disciplined and structure some time that's really just between you and you. Maybe by going to a different part of the house or room, if that's available. You work it out, you know your specific situations. Now, this is what you do when you get to your alone time. First of all, it's helpful to have a meditation of some sort to gain perspective and peace. But we're talking about the erotic. So we're going to talk not about meditation, but medibation, which is a combination of masturbation and meditating. Medibation. And this is a little exercise I learned way back in the day from Margot Woods, the author of Masturbation, Tantra, and Self-Love, and good luck finding it. It's been out of print for about 30 years. But here's the exercise I liked best from that book. Try it at home. Masturbate until you're almost going to have an orgasm. And right when you're at the peak of that orgasm, pull back and breathe that orgasm into your heart. And then just be. For a few moments, whatever that is. Do it again. Masturbate almost to the point of coming, then breathe it up to your heart and just be. The third time, masturbate, come in your genitals and breathe it up to your heart and come in your heart. Anything may happen. You may get a feeling of peace. You may cry. You may giggle. You may get a message from deep inside you somewhere, or maybe just utter peaceful quiet. Try it. See what happens for you. It's a lovely meditation. Secondly, it's even better if you breathe. This is my big thing, as the people who know me know. Breath is the hottest sex toy there is. You can use this time alone to learn how to breathe all the way through an erotic experience, either with yourself or someone else, and into orgasm and still be breathing. When you do that, you can launch yourself into these expanded, ecstatic states that go way beyond just a genital orgasm. If you want to try one at home, I have a meditation MP3. It's on my website, and it's Breath and Energy Orgasm Meditation. And you can download it and practice this at home. You can put on headphones if there's other people in the house. And the best thing about this is the fact that it's like an emotional release experience, and it gets rid of all those quarantine horror feelings that have built up that are making us all have weird, bad dreams and interrupting our sleep. So it's a technique that works on a healing level, on an inspiration level, and on an erotic level. And that's pretty good, 3 for 1 experience, right? Okay, lastly, for all of you who are thinking, oh my God, if I just have time alone, all I'm going to do is watch porn. That's all I ever do. I'm really getting worried about how much porn I'm watching. Do not be. Just change how you're watching it. My dear friend and colleague Joseph Kramer has developed something he calls porn yoga. Porn yoga is a conscious way of watching porn. I'll let him tell you how to do it. Just go to pornyoga.com. And, but it is an embodied way of relating with an erotic charge. And you can use this time to come to some sort of peace and regulations for some of you around your porn watching. So those are 3 exercises that you can do right now. And when you come out on the other side of this quarantine, and I promise we will, we did before, we will again, you will be an erotically happier, healthier, and smarter person. Thank you.
That's beautiful, Barbara. Thank you so much for doing that. I feel all inspired now. I need to go and just have half an hour by myself.
Yeah, alone time.
I'll be able to do that.
There's a lot of just praise for you, Barbara, in the chat box, and I just want to encourage y'all, if you have any questions for Barbara, put them in the Q&A and we'll get to them at the end.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. I'd love to hear from Cindy now. Cindy is amazing. I've known Cindy for years. Sorts of interesting things. She's Australian, like me, but now based in New York. She is a renowned sex and relationships therapist and counselor, coach, and certified clinical sexologist. She's also got some really amazing things going on with desire. So I'd really love to ask about that, because we've talked about solo practices quite a lot. So
yeah.
I'd love to hear about what you have to say about what we can use in this time during COVID while we're locked in with our partners, maybe to reactivate our desire. Maybe that could be something that you'd be able to speak to.
Sure. So yeah, hi everybody. Some of you I can see some familiar names in the list there, and some very unfamiliar names. So hello, my name is Cindy. As Artemisha said, I'm originally from Australia, from Melbourne, and I live in New York City now. And I'm a sex and relationship therapist. It's probably the easiest phrase that I use to describe what I do. People can usually nod their heads and go, yeah, I know what that means. And I work with clients all over the world, currently in this format. So, and surprisingly, it works very, very well, to my surprise and to their surprise too. And one of the things that I have been looking at for the last 10 years is the nature of desire, because it is something that people get very worked up about in both, affirmative and less affirmative context, because it seems to always be a thing that we are, either we're chasing it, we want to feel more of it, or there are folks at the other end of the spectrum who feel like they have too much and it causes them problems in some way. And then, I think that the truth is that for a lot of people, desire it's really the place that the mind and the body and the heart really intersect. But we tend to think of desire, it's often conceptualized, especially when you see it talked about in mainstream media. It's usually conceptualized as horniness. Am I horny or am I not? And we only get those two options. You're either horny or you're not. And so for people who, for whatever reason, where horniness, perhaps if they're experiencing what we would call low desire, so meaning, that they're not very horny, they tend to think, well, then, sex is out of the question for me because I'm not horny, so why would I bother? And in a regular world, in a regular circumstance, I would say, sure, why would you bother? And it would be the equivalent perhaps of a client coming to me and saying, you know, Cindy, I really want to like peaches, you know, the fruit, not the singer. You know, I really want to like peaches. And I would say, why? What difference does it make if you like peaches? Oh, well, my partner likes peaches and they get really shitty with me if I don't eat the peaches that they give me. I'm like, well, why do they want to give you peaches? Why don't they want to give you, what do you want? You know, well, I don't want anything. I don't want any peaches and I don't want anything at all. And so this is how the conversations tend to go when I'm working with people who have mismatched desire. It's this implication that the desire between partners has to be for the same thing. So the peaches are being offered. And in any other context, if someone said, I don't like peaches, but I like broccoli, it'd be like, okay, well, you can just have broccoli. But we don't give ourselves that permission with sex. We all have to be on the same page, apparently, and we all have to want the peaches. So this is where my work around desire really comes into its own, because if you are someone, and I'll speak to this in the context of a relationship, because you know, both Marsha and Barbara spoke more about solo practices, and this stuff relates to solo situations too, frankly, but I'll couch it in the context of partnerships simply because we haven't gone there yet. If you're in a relationship and you're cohabiting with your partner and you're trapped in a house or an apartment or some sort of living situation, you know, in a caravan, and you've been in this for the last 6 weeks, and depending on where you are in the world, there's no letting up and you're going to be in this situation for another 2 or 3 months, it might be really difficult for you to be igniting your desire. So first of all, I want to say that if that is what's actually happening to you and your libido is sort of through the floor and you're not really interested in sex right now, acknowledge that that is okay, first of all. If that is then becoming a problem in your relationship, if you're in a relationship with a partner who has a higher desire for, let's say, genital-based sex than you do, and it's starting to cause tension and it's starting to cause frustration, what is useful to know is, I mean, there could be a lot of reasons for that too, and I'm very aware that I've only got a handful of minutes, so I can't go into a full, you know, description of the erotic landscape of, you know, the mind and the emotions. But what can also be happening is that if you're feeling pressured, or if you're feeling kind of ambushed by your partner into having to have sex, or you're feeling like, oh, I probably should do it because, you know, it's been a week and, you know, time's getting on. It can be useful to recognize that sometimes the desire for sex, so I don't mean the horniness, but the mindset of going, okay, yeah, I'm willing to go there, can actually come after we've started. So for a lot of people who struggle with the getting started part, it can be useful to frame it in your mind as in the same way that you would perhaps approach going for a run or going to the gym. So first thing in the morning, no one really likes getting up and getting out of bed and putting on their sports gear and going to the gym. That whole sequence of getting up, putting on your gym clothes and going to the gym, I don't really know of anyone who enjoys that part. And then they get on the treadmill and then perhaps they don't really enjoy that part either. But what they do enjoy, about 20 minutes in or 10 minutes in, once the endorphins start kicking in and they start sweating and they've got their favorite songs going on in their ears, or they're listening to their favorite podcast or whatever, then they start feeling that, you know, almost like a physical gratitude, like I'm really glad I'm doing this. But actually getting to the gym, getting to the point of being there, that part was not fun. So for a lot of people who experience low desire, they will experience it in a really similar way, that actually getting over the hump of getting into sort of sexy mode is often worse than actually getting into it. Now that is working on the assumption that you more or less enjoy sex, you more or less enjoy it once you're there, but the biggest hurdle that you're having is finding that motivation. So one of the big things that I offer people is to give yourself permission to find a motivation for sex that's not based in horniness. Because the truth is, and this is especially true for people in long-term relationships, horniness is extremely unreliable. Horniness is based in a youth, fitness, it's based in a very heavy narrative that says, you know, young, slim, able-bodied people get horny, and therefore that is the reason that all of us have sex, because you're horny. And for the vast majority of people on the planet, guess what? Horniness is not why they have sex. There's actually a study that's been done. There's been identified, and this is just from clinicians. There's probably more, because we know that clinicians don't know everything, right? But the study revealed 234 reasons that people have sex. And guess what? Making babies and horniness were actually really low on the list. So if I were to ask you, viewers, why do you have sex? What's your motivation? It could be horniness. It could be making babies. It could be because you feel obliged to. It could be because you're bored. It could be because, you know, for money. It could be, there's a bazillion reasons why people have sex. And so often the people who experience low desire and then struggle with it, because then there are some people who experience low desire and they're fine with it. They don't give a shit. I'm not talking about those people. They're pretty much sorted. It's the ones who have the low desire and they want for it to be different. They are the ones that I would then say, like the person with the peaches, I need to eat the peaches. Why? You don't have to. You have to find an incentive within yourself, and it can be anything. What happens then is, can you accept what your motivation is? Because again, we expect it to be horniness, or our partners expect that of us. Well, I want to have sex with you because I think you're hot. And therefore I need you to want to fuck me because you think I'm hot. If you don't think I'm hot, then we're not on the same page. And perhaps you're not on the same page. Perhaps horniness is your partner's motivator, but it's not your motivator. So then the conversation shifts into, well, if our motivations are not the same, can we as a duo make peace with that? Can we find a way to allow that truth to exist without it canceling out the fact that we both actually want to reorient our desire and reorient our passion and our sex life? And I have just seen the time, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Robin, to let you speak, because I know we're running out of time. So sorry to be quick, but there you go.
It was really useful though. Thank you. That was great. I love the way you speak. You can articulate things so well. It's really good. Okay, so Robin is the co-founder of the School of Consent with Dr. Betty Martin, which lots of people know Betty Martin. Robin is also a international coach and facilitator, and is passionate about helping people find what brings them pleasure in their body and in their life. Robin's focus is at the intersection of mindfulness, consent, embodiment, and sexuality, guiding people to slow down and bring awareness to those desires and practices and communication skills and a whole bunch of other things. How about I let her tell you all about it? What is it that you want to share about us? How is the erotic, how is your skill set relevant to these times? What would you like to share?
Well, first, I'm going to slow myself way down, because my intellectual mind is totally titillated, and hearing all of these speakers, my mind is just going and going and going. So yeah, the first thing I want to do is slow down and come into this moment with each of you. And what I'm finding at this time is the importance of bringing the erotic into our daily lives. And so when I think of the erotic, I think of it in the broadest sense as our connection to our aliveness, the connection to our passion, to pleasure, to desire. And for many, that's related to sex. And it's much broader than that.
And so when we are talking about coming into connection, intimacy, experiencing play, all of those things that we want and desire in our lives, and particularly at this time when there is so much physical disconnection, in order to find that, we have to feel safe. We have to find a place of safety in our nervous system, in our body. And so the erotic becomes a doorway into creating that sense of safety so that we can come into connection with others, whether that is physically with the people that we are with, or whether that's remotely connecting to the people in our lives. And so one of the practices that I would love to share with you that has been so helpful, both for me in my personal practice in dealing with the emotional roller coaster that I think we all are on, and also something that's been really helpful in supporting clients, to connect to our erotic and our emotional bodies. And not just connecting to feeling good, feeling all of those feel good feelings, but feeling everything. And so I don't know about the rest of you, but I have noticed waves of grief and anger and sadness and joy and pleasure and more grief and more anger. And so as I'm riding these waves, being able to slow down and connect to my body and connect to my sensuality, I find the gems and the gifts in all of these emotions that are coming up. I find in my anger, my desire for more justice in the world. I find in my grief, all of the things that I love and am passionate about, the things that I've lost, the things that others have lost in this time. I find in my fear, my will to live a full, rich life. And so our emotions give us information about what we want more of and where we're getting stuck. And so as a way to go with this flow of emotions and allow it to move through our bodies, I invite a practice of first slowing down and making connection to the body, making connection to our felt sense. The practice that Marcia shared is a great starting place for that, of just taking an object and bringing our attention to that object and seeing what we notice in our body, the sensations. And from there, you can move to feeling your own body, moving your hands across your skin, noticing the texture and the sensations, moving your hands around your body. And so part of that is the slowing down and bringing the attention to our felt sense. And then I like to add movement into that. So when we are not feeling safe, when our fight-flight response is triggered or our freeze response, the way we move out of that is by mobilizing, inviting movement. And so we can use that same process of bringing movement to connect to these emotions and help them flow through our system. So what I love to do is find a song that elicits a particular emotion that I'm feeling. So I might feel like I might find a rage song, and there are some great rage songs. I might find a grief song. I might find a really naughty song. And I connect to that emotion. And I move my body slowly and sensually with that music. And it's such a powerful way to allow ourselves to feel everything, to move our bodies through so that we can welcome the next feeling. Whether that is something we label as a good emotion or a bad emotion, it's all just our capacity to feel and to feel the richness and the fullness of life and everything that it's presenting to us. So I encourage you to find songs that turn you on, that light you up, that bring you out and motivate you to move through these challenging times that we're facing. There was a question about pleasure practices that I might recommend during isolation. So, we touched on practices if you're solo, or practices if you're with a partner. I know that there are also others who have a partner, but they're not in the same place. There was a question about how do we connect and keep that passion alive through long distance relationships. And I recommend setting aside time, having sensuality dates. And I've been playing with this with a partner that I have in the UK, and we take turns planning our sensuality dates. And it can be whatever is bringing us joy and pleasure and lighting us up. It can be having a bath at the same time and talking on the phone while you're in the bath. It can be cooking a meal together. It can be asking each other how you want to be touched, and touching yourself in that same way, and feeling the connection on our skin, feeling the release of oxytocin. So there's some great opportunities to be creative and explore and see what you can find.
Thank you, Robin. That's amazing. Yeah, really, really useful to have practical ways to go forward from now. Yeah, there's some amazing responses coming through in the chat box as well. We've only got a few minutes left, 4 minutes left. So I wanted to open up for questions that you might have for the panel. So if you have something that you'd like to ask somebody, now is the time to pop it in the chat box. Let's find out. Marsha, see if you can grab
in the Q&A box, please. We have 8 questions in, so we can start plowing through them.
Okay.
And we are aware that some of you may have to go, but this is going to be recorded. This is recorded. Barbara's been recording it, so we will be releasing it. If you have to go, don't worry. We'll still answer your question. Do we want to do a quick wrap up for the people who have to go, or should we dive into the questions first?
Okay, so if you need to go now, we will be putting our links to our various sites if you'd like to explore further with us in the follow-up email if you're registered, and also under wherever this recording is released. I think it might be on Facebook as well, Facebook Live. I'm not sure if
it didn't work.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Okay.
If you only have one takeaway from this, I think you're going to have more than one, because look at these people. But if you only have one, I would be really happy if you just got curious about what happens if you put your intentional attention on the erotic at this time. Yeah. So if anyone wants some questions, we really only have 3 minutes. I know Barbara has to leave on time, so ask her questions first.
Okay, let's see. There's none in here that are specific for Barbara. So if anybody has anything for Barbara, go ahead and go now. Let's see. There's a question for Cindy relating to recent posts of yours about healing the erotic. As a pleasure agent, especially lately, I come across so much of the absence in the permission we need to give ourselves to engage in self-love. What are some strategies you use to promote that permission?
I think it's really useful to know why you want something to change, because healing the erotic is fucking hard work. And if you don't have your own back with it, if you don't have a genuine motivation. So I often use the example of, like, it's learning a new language. So if you want to learn, Chinese, for example, and I would just say to you, well, why do you want to learn Chinese? And you're like, I don't know. It's going to be really hard for you to maintain motivation, because you've got to learn the whole new alphabet. You've got to learn all those new tonal sounds. You've got to learn so much. And if there's no incentive to do it, it's going to be really hard to stick to it. But if you were to then say, well, actually, I'm really interested in, in Chinese culture, or I'm really interested in Chinese art, or I'm moving to Beijing. So, there's my motivation. It's easier to grab onto something and stick to it then when you have a trajectory of how you can imagine this process is going to bring you some sort of, release or joy or freedom at the end. So in terms of how do you create permission to heal the erotic, the first part is to be able to recognize what the incentive is. What is it that you want to change? And use that. That's going to be the carrot on the string that will guide you through tough times. You're going to need a team of, not a team, but you're going to need a few people in your corner who are going to be on your side, because it can be really difficult to do, but it's also really doable. I'm definitely one of those people who's done that. I'm going to take a wild stab here and say that everyone on this panel has done that too. And it's absolutely worth it. But in that case, healing the erotic really, really takes you to be very, very, even if you know that you just want something to change, even if you think, I just can't keep living the way I'm living, that's an incentive enough. It doesn't have to be mind-bogglingly, insightful. It can just be, I've outgrown my life as it is. That's a perfectly good incentive. So that's what I would offer you with regard to permission granting strategies.
Thank you. Barbara wants to answer the question. I have a lot of male clients who want to show off and penetrate and perform. How do we teach men how to slow down and be patient in experience? How do we get back to safe sex and feel pleasure instead of spewing fluids everywhere?
I loved that line. Hi, Kendra. And my first question is, can you order them to do it? That's one. But I think session setup is part of that. It's Cindy was talking about intent and intent and agreements around partner sex. I think you can do that with clients too. I think it may be possible to make agreements that they can do whatever they want to do within your boundaries if you get to show them something first. And it can turn into sort of a game where you can get them to slow down and start breathing and start the kind of, how when you breathe a great deal, everything sort of becomes more sensitive. And then when you touch, they sort of start to get that. But I also wanted to say, PM me and we'll talk more about it. But to Robin's point, slow down, get them to breathe, make some agreement about they have to put up with that for 15 minutes in order to get the good stuff. That's the short answer.
Wonderful. Thank you.
It's okay. I can stick on for another minute.
Great. This one, anybody who wants to take a pass at this, I think this is a fantastic question. And we'll try to get to all of them. Within BDSM, I have always felt that humiliation play was a hard limit. During this time of isolation, I have begun thinking more about it and wondering if there is massive power untapped in this kink that I could be experiencing. Ooh. How do you know if something that holds huge energy for you is going to be helpful or not?
How do you know if it's going to be helpful or not? So part of my time as a sex worker has been, well, most of it actually was as a dominatrix. So I could talk to this one.
I thought you might.
Humiliation is really interesting. Anytime that we're interacting with a part of ourselves that's telling us that it wants to be processed because it's turning us on, there is something in there for us of value. So if it's a hard limit for you, you don't need to go there. But if it is a turn on, or it is a turn on for someone in your life, there is a reason that it's there. We process all of ourselves. We become whole by exploring and accepting all of ourselves. That's how we do it. Humiliation itself, I find fascinating. I find it such a fascinating game, because quite often I find that sexuality, our turn-ons are, whether we're conscious of it or not, actually there is a force within us that is guiding us, giving us momentum towards wholeness within ourselves, wholeness in that feeling of wanting to merge with another and have a temporary moment of wholeness, and wholeness with all that is. a kind of ego dissolution experience, if you like, a part when you get outside of your head into the flow, into the part of you that is not the talking everyday part of yourself. If your turn-ons are really, really, really wise, they guide you to your unique way that you need to get past your own ego into that beautiful flow experience. That's what they do. Humiliation is, what does the ego think of humiliation? Think about that. Humiliation is kind of a direct attack on the ego, right? Your sense of worth, yourself, your value. If you are turned on by that, quite often I find that is the key to having an experience of letting go of the ego temporarily so that you can enter the flow. But you've done it. Your clever, clever, clever turn-ons have done it in a way not feeling like an attack. It feels like pleasure with the beautiful buffer of feeling aroused. So your very, very clever mind has done that. So every time I've had a client who comes up and wants to explore humiliation, I ask very, very carefully and negotiate exactly what that looks like, because humiliation, that I need to trust their turn on, not my version of what I think their turn on is around that, and create some very clear container of consent and do it within the container of respect for each other and care for each other's well-being. But within that safe container, humiliation can transport you. It can actually be such a wise force that is trying to transport you into that beautiful oneness flow feeling of surrender. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we've got, I think, three or four more questions. I've worked in sexuality and disability oncology. My clients are more disconnected than ever from a place of already being disconnected. Through isolation, there are less carers and workers. My clients have zero motivation to engage with themselves. How can I motivate self-exploration with people who rely on others to explore themselves? Anybody want to take that one?
I was curious about what they're disconnected from, because that's an interesting thing. Are they you mean that they're disconnected from the outside world, they're disconnected from themselves? And then I'm curious, for the person who wrote the question, why do you want them to be engaging with themselves erotically? Is that what they want?
Yeah,
I guess I'm curious about. So
yeah,
I need a bit more.
If you could put more information in the chat, we can circle back around to that question. That's a great question. Let's see. Can Marcia summarize the exercise in a few words? Yes, I can do both of them briefly. So the first one was taking an object, any object that's lying around, and laying back, closing your eyes, getting into basically a resting position, not a working position where we're like typing on our keyboards, but laying back and taking some breaths and sort of getting present with your body and starting to slow down. And then after you've slowed down a little bit, feeling the object up with your hands and going significantly slower in that process than you might think would be necessary, and letting your hands approach it from curiosity and from sensation. And how can you have this object make your hands feel good? What about the object is nice for your little nerve endings, for all your little nerve endings in your hands? So that's one of the two exercises. And the other exercise I was saying was, if you are at a distance from a partner, you're not sheltering in place together, and you're connecting online, exploring touch through having one partner guide the other partner in the process of touching their own body with instruction, and being precise in those instructions. Like if you want to go faster or slower or more intense to your fingernails or pull your hair a little bit or whatever. And then you can mix in voice and other things like that. So that's the two exercises in a nutshell. We spend a lot more time on that when we when we do it in not 5 minutes. Thanks for asking. Let's see. For Cindy, what are your recommendations for keeping the erotic alive, especially for those who are not sheltered with their lovers?
Video sex is fabulous. Use, this or WhatsApp or whatever, there's so many video formats. That this is actually a perfect recipe to increase longing. And it's, there's no reason why desire should dwindle during this time, especially if you're not cohabiting together, because you've got months potentially, or weeks, depending on where you are in the world, to anticipate looking forward to seeing each other again. So this is where you're getting your recipes together for when you get back together again, and all the fabulous meals you're going to cook. And of course I'm speaking metaphorically. Plan all the stuff you want to do sexually. This is the perfect time to be taking an erotic inventory of all the stuff you want to do together. Talk about it. And this, really have permission to draw this out. Think about your environments, your contexts, your costumes, the which part of the house you want to do it in, whose house do you want to do it in, if it's a house at all. Do you want to get the neighbors involved? How do we broach the subject with them? What are we going to do with the kids? Where's the baby? There is so much to prepare, and you've really got the time for it. Well, maybe you don't have the time for it. Maybe you're looking after 5 kids all by yourself, but it's about using the time that you would normally spend in physical proximity to your partner to actually start planning for, what kind of sex do we want to have when we get back together. So I think that using this time wisely, and it also, having something to look forward to is really sexy. So that would be my suggestion.
I'm curious if anybody else wants to jump on that one.
Yeah, can I just add on to that? It's also a fantastic time to really tune into our desires and practice asking for what we want. When we are in the same space as a lover, it's easy to go into a place of, oh, I hope they touch me the way I want, or, oh, they're doing the right thing, or, oh, it's not quite the right thing, but it's something. And so now that we have this space, it's great to just start noticing, oh, I'm really longing for a back massage, or I would love to just spend a day in bed, or I would love to create a delicious meal together, and just noticing and savoring those desires, and then getting into the practice of actually voicing them, which can feel really vulnerable.
Thank you. I want to jump in on this one because I think it's a fabulous question of how do you keep the erotic alive. I'm a person who doesn't like video sex. I have security concerns. It's not my jam. But the things I've found that have been very fun is dirty talk has been working great, and sharing porn, sharing erotic stories, either that my partner really likes to make videos. I don't make videos, so they just send me videos, and I don't make videos back. I just do dirty talk back, and that works for us. I've been finding that sending dirty stories back and forth, either that you've written or that you have found on the internet, because there's plenty of, you can Google for things that are like your interests and kinks and fetishes. So that's been really fun. And even if you're somebody who has a hard time with video for whatever reason, you can do things like taking a picture of your underwear laying on the bed, or you can do things that are not, maybe don't feel like risque about your body being a performance, but maybe there's other things, so kind of speaking to both what Robin and Cindy, you can take pictures of the food you're making for the dinner that you're going to have later that day over Zoom, and you can describe the way it smells, and you can get into those sensual descriptions of things, and you can be very suggestive if overt is not your thing. And I'm having a lot of fun with that lately.
Yeah, thank you everyone so much for contributing. You've done so well. We've gone 15 minutes over time, so I think we do
have a follow-up on that question though, if we want to, real quick.
Okay, real quick.
So Tess is disconnected from partners and workers who offer them touch, and they're hoping for some pleasure or some eroticism. So the original question was, the clients are more disconnected than ever. They have zero motivation to engage with themselves, but they're hoping for pleasure, some eroticism. So how can you motivate them to for self-exploration when they're relying on others to explore themselves? Cindy, did you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I guess I'm still a bit confused, because if they want pleasure but they're not motivated to have pleasure, that's the part that I'm like,
Yeah.
if these people are living in institutionalized care, we've got to be careful about consent always, but we've got to be especially attentive to it there. So I'm curious about who is the one who's being motivated to get them motivated. Because if the motivation's not internally generated by them, then maybe they're okay with it as it is. There's something about the question that's not fitting into me.
Feel free to email any of us, and maybe one of us can help you out. And that goes for everybody. Feel free to reach out. Let us know what you got from it. Let us know any follow-up questions you have.
That'd be really great if you did that. Also, all of the links to our particular offerings and websites will be included in the follow-up email afterwards, along with the recording, so you can look at it again if you'd like to go over any of the exercises or explore it a little bit further. But yes, we'd love it if you contacted us and asked us your questions. Go for it. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for contributing. I really, really had a great time. And you're all so wise and so generous with your knowledge. I love it. Thank you so much. Okay, everybody, go out there and explore the erotic. What potential does it have for you? What did you take away? What can you do now to actually put into action something that you learned today? What can you do? Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Okay. What? Did I do the wrong thing? How do we end it? Marsha has to end it.